This also crosses over into point 15, perhaps one of the more annoying points, vampire love. Okay, in Twilight, it's, you know, anybody who's even heard of the book kind of knows it's this epic fantasy love story of a vampire who meets a mortal girl and they fall in love, and eventually she becomes a vampire and they're going to live together for eternity, but not really practical. I mean, okay, he marries her. How long have they been together when he marries her? He's going to live forever. And even if he didn't sire her and make her a vampire, he would have to put up with her for her mortal life, which would last a while considering he marries her when she's young. Like, it isn't a very well thought out idea. Sure, it's romantic, but I mean, how many humans go into marriage young only to get divorced 5 years down the line? I mean, well, I guess he can always snack on her should she piss him off too much. That would be an entirely mature and plausible way to handle a vampire romance kind of thing, but no. I think the point I'm trying to make here is that when you're gonna live forever, saying you're gonna be with someone forever, it's gonna be forever until one of you gets murdered, or, you know, in the only way. Can they be killed? I have yet to stumble across a way that Meyer players can be killed. If there is, comment, seriously, I'll thank you for it. But my point is, in the Saga of Darren Shan, the topic of vampire love is touched upon. Both in vampire-vampire relationships and in vampire-human relationships. First, vampire-vampire relationships. It only shows up, I think, once in the entire thing, and it's the character of Lawton Krebs. When he and Darren travel to Vampire Mountain, a character is introduced called Ara Sales, who is a female vampire, a vampiress. Quite a fierce character too, and I am fond of her. And her and Lawton were, what is in vampire terms, married. But because they live for a long time, in Darren Shan's, well, they do not live eternally, but simply for 10 times the amount they would have lived as a human. So effectively, from the point they are sired, for every 10 years that pass, they only age 1, except for half vampires, who age 1 for every 5. Again, you know, innovative. But Ara and Lawton were married, and when they went through with the ceremony, they set a preset a number of years they would spend together, which isn't ever stated, I don't think, exactly how long they were together, but they were together for a certain amount of time. When that time came to an end, they then decided, do we want to stay together for longer, or has the relationship reached its end? And they decided it had, and they broke up, and even though they both still had fond feelings for each other, and they expressed that in the books, it's, you know, it's a much more mature, sensible, plausible, realistic way that shows the existence of the vampires has been thought about, in terms of that you can't compare human relationships to the way eternal creatures, or near eternal creatures, would behave. Things would be different. Laws in society would be different. And okay, the topic of vampire-human relationships, I think this is where the greatest resemblance between Twilight and the Saga of Darren Shan comes into effect, and this is that the relationship between Bella and Edward, there is a very similar relationship between Darren and a character called Debbie. Debbie is first introduced in the 3rd book in the saga, Tunnels of Blood, in which they have travelled to a city where Lawton grew up, and there's, you know, there's murders and stuff going on. It's not really important towards the actual love angle, but Darren meets a girl who is about 13 at the time, and he looks about 13. I think he's sort of aged at least a little bit since he left home, so he's, you know, sort of 12-ish still now, and they have a sort of vague relationship thing going on. They meet, and they quite like each other, and he meets her parents, and they go on a date to the cinema, and I think it's quite well written in terms of the awkwardness of young teenage dates, and the mindset of girls, that girls are quite more with it than boys are, and because it's written from Darren's point of view, it's funny, it's comical, it's light-hearted, and it's dealt with in a much more sensible manner, because the character of Darren talks to Evra, a friend of his, who is a couple of years older, and so maybe slightly more experienced in these sort of things about it, And Evra basically says to him, you can't be with her. You know, you can't stay, we're going to have to leave, and you can't tell you're a vampire because she'd freak. And so Darren says, I'm fully aware of this, and I'm not intending for it to be anything long. I've left it fully open so that when the time comes I can leave. I'll make my excuses, say that my dad, Mr. Krebsley, has to leave town, and I'll never see her again, and that'll be it. And it will just be, you know, one of those teen romances that never goes anywhere. And this is, you know, mature, sensible, well thought out. Then she shows up again, which is... I'm not sure what to think of this. I did like it. It was a good twist. It was one of the ones I didn't see coming. It irks me. In the 8th book in the series, a lot of time has passed. Debbie's grown into a young woman, and she's a teacher at a school that Darren, through a convoluted plot twist, ends up attending, looking about 15 by this point, due to his slowed aging. His surname is changed on the documentation, but his first name remains Darren, and Debbie, as the teacher, recognises him. And as murders begin to happen again in the city, and they're there again, she figures out, or doesn't so much figure out, realises something is going on, and then they reveal to her about vampires. I just feel the one thing I do find in it is that it shows the complications that would occur had Bella not become a vampire, and had she aged. Because Darren is 15, and he still loves Debbie. He genuinely feels for her. It's the only sort of girl he's ever had a relationship with. And she's a young woman, and she's like, I can't be involved with a teenager. And he's kind of arguing the point, going, I'm not a teenager. I'm a half vampire, but I'm as old as you are. I just look younger. And so it has its pros and cons. I think genuinely the relationship between Darren and Debbie is more sensible and more mature. And I think the one thing I do like is that Debbie fights, she gets involved, she helps out. She's not brilliant, she's human, she's a bit naff, a bit of a crybaby at times. And one of the main problems with this is that Darren spends a lot of time worrying about her getting into dangerous situations, which Edward doesn't really seem to do, because he just has this kind of cocky self-confidence that should Bella get into trouble, he'll be there to save her, which annoys me. But, I suppose that since Harkat does kind of whack Darren upside the head and go, you know, Debbie may have to die, you're gonna have to accept that, even though she never does, it just, you know, again, more sensible, more realistic, more grounded in the fact that war is occurring and that there are casualties and stuff like that does occur.